Advance with Vance. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Last summer, Dem and media types spent a lot of time trash-talking Trump's VP pick.
Could Kamala Harris have picked a better contrast to J.D. Vance, who I think in opposite to Waltz, to know that guy is to really detest that guy.
You may have noticed Donald Trump has been resorting to some wild lies about my record, and some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
Tim Walz over there, who was the first one to actually call J.D. Vance and Donald Trump weird. And then look at the rest of them. MAGA, Make America Great Again. How about the Republican Party? And then there's, of course, J.D. Vance. Of course, people might just be searching for the word weird and associating with Republicans.
They're in a Vance trance. Yeah. And now we know why they were so hot last summer to smash him. And it wasn't Vance's childish cat lady comments, which were hilarious, by the way. Instead, it was because they knew how effective he'd be. Because like Trump, the man never stops. He never backs down from a fight. Last week, he laid waste to the Euro globalists who think U.S. taxpayers should be their forever bankers.
I've heard a lot about what you need to defend yourselves from, and of course that's important. But what has seemed a little bit less clear to me, and certainly I think to many of the citizens of Europe, is what exactly it is that you're defending yourselves for.
It was a seismic message felt around the world and a much-needed wake-up call for our allies. Now, one of the best things about Vance is how he schools these impudent news anchors who usually take the side of foreigners over Americans.
In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals have been properly vetted.
But there are 30,000 people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary concern as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that we know that we...
Masterful on policy? Yeah, of course he is. But Vance's cultural message is just as important.
My message to young men is, I think that our culture sends a message to young men that you should suppress every masculine urge. You should try to cast aside your family. You should try to suppress what makes you a young man in the first place. And I think that my message to young men is don't allow this broken culture to send you a message that you're a bad person because you're a man, because you like to tell a joke, because you like to have a beer with your friends, or because you're competitive.
Also very important in a vice president, of course, is he never forgets who's in the driver's seat.
He's got the best sense of humor of any American political figure, but I think this is why young men in particular are so, they're so inspired by President Trump, is because he doesn't allow the media to tell him he can't make a joke or he can't have an original thought. President Trump just says what's on his mind. That's a damn good thing, and it's a good example to set for young men in American culture.
And he's right, of course. He's right. Young men love Trump. Men ages 18 to 29 voted for Trump by a 14-point margin. The Washington Post notes that it's the first time a GOP presidential candidate claimed an outright majority of the group since 1988. But why did Republicans in the past struggle with this group? Well, first of all, we all know big media, sometimes at the urging of government officials, always stepped in to help the Democrats.
The Biden administration did more to destroy free speech, not just in the United States, but also in Europe, than any administration in American history.
Again, he's relentless. He's always on the offensive. He's reminding Americans about why cutting wasteful spending is critical for our economic survival.
The third thing that he's tried to do, of course, with the help of Elon and all the great folks at Doge, is ask, what are we doing with all of the American taxpayers' money, and why are we wasting so much of it on garbage that the American people either aren't aware that we're spending it on or don't want to be spending it on?
100% right. It's very effective. Now, when you watch these clips, you watch the entire speech, which you should, you understand why Trump picked him in the first place. Again, it's the genius of Donald Trump. And he was excoriated for picking Vance, as you recall. And so far, the MAGA base, they couldn't be happier. And they're so happy that Vance is already shaping up to be the runaway choice of the MAGA supporters to be Trump's successor. The New York Times today is reporting on the, quote, quieter efforts that are underway to position Vice President Vance as Mr. Trump's eventual successor, and also revealing that Vance is expected to lead some of the legislative battles over Mr. Trump's agenda. The administration's chief lobbyist in the Senate, and he's also assigned to help oversee the potential sale of TikTok. Well, one thing's clear. They're definitely not treating him like Biden's people treated Kamala in the first few years as an afterthought. She couldn't get arrested because no, where's Kamala? His brain power is just beyond dispute. And the caliber of people surrounding Trump in general is just superb. But in promoting J.D. Vance and other populists, from the millennial generation, showcasing them, being confident enough to do that, President Trump is not making the mistake of Reagan, who, remember, did not leave the party in the greatest of hands. Trump is deciding, at least for now, that he's going to leave this MAGA coalition in great hands, one that's going to be around for decades to come. And that's the angle.